Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being here today. I want to talk about something we often avoid: fear, or misunderstand the power of being alone. Now, don't get it twisted. Being alone isn't about loneliness. It's about finding yourself, growing, and tapping into your purpose. All right, let's talk. Let's get real for a moment. In the hustle and the chaos and the noise of life, we forget the value of stepping back, of pausing, of being still. We're so busy chasing dreams, chasing people, chasing approval, that we lose sight of the fact that sometimes the most profound answers come when we stop chasing altogether, when we stop and simply listen. But here's the catch: you can't hear anything if you're surrounded by constant noise. Now, I'm not just talking about the noise outside, phones buzzing, people talking, cars honking. No, I'm talking about that internal noise too. That little voice in your head that's always comparing, always doubting, always worrying. It's loud, isn't it? And it's exhausting. You ever feel like you're running a race you don't even remember signing up for? Yeah, I see you. I feel that too. But here's the thing: in the midst of all that noise, there's a way to find peace, clarity, and purpose. And it starts with stepping away. You see, there's power in pulling back and retreating, not to give up, but to refocus. You know how a bow works, right? To shoot an arrow forward, you have to pull it back first. That's what stepping into stillness does. It pulls you back, so when it's time to move, you're not just running aimlessly. You're aimed, you're locked in, you're focused. Now, let's talk about what happens when you sit in that stillness. I know for some of you, the idea of being alone with your thoughts is terrifying. Maybe it's because when the distractions are gone, you're left with you. And maybe you don't like what you see. That's real. But let me tell you something. The only way to change what you see is to face it. You can't fix what you don't confront. When you're still, when you're quiet, something incredible happens. You start to hear a voice you've ignored for far too long. Your voice. Not the voice of your parents, not the voice of your friends, not the voice of society telling you who you should be. Your voice. The one that knows what you really want, what you really need. And let me tell you, that voice is powerful. It's wise, but it's also patient. It waits for you to stop running long enough to listen. Here's another thing about stillness: it reveals. It reveals the things you've been running from. The fears, the doubts, the pain. But it also reveals something else: strength. You start to see that you've survived things you thought would break you. You've overcome obstacles that seemed impossible at the time. And if you could do that, what else are you capable of? More than you've ever imagined. But don't get it twisted, this isn't easy. Being still, being quiet, it's work. It's uncomfortable. Because when the noise fades, the truth comes out. The truth about who you are, where you're going, and what you've been avoiding. But that's where the growth happens. That's where transformation begins. It's like when you're cleaning out a closet. At first it's messy. You've got to pull everything out, see the clutter, and decide what stays and what goes. That's what happens in stillness. You're cleaning out the clutter in your mind, your heart, your soul. And let's be real, there are some things you've been holding on to that you need to let go of. Relationships, habits, beliefs. You know the ones I'm talking about. The ones that no longer serve you. The ones that keep you stuck. Stillness gives you the space to see those things for what they are. And when you see them clearly, you can finally release them. Now, I know some of you are thinking, but I don't have time to be still. I've got responsibilities, deadlines, goals, and I hear you. But let me ask you this. What's the point of chasing those goals if you lose yourself in the process? What's the point of climbing the ladder if it's leaning against the wrong wall? Taking time to be still isn't about stepping away from your goals, it's about making sure your goals align with your purpose. It's about making sure the ladder you're climbing is the one that leads to the life you actually want. Stillness isn't about doing nothing. It's about doing the inner work. It's about asking yourself the hard questions. Who am I? What do I want? What's holding me back? And let me tell you, when you start answering those questions, your life changes. You start making decisions not based on fear or pressure, but on clarity and conviction. You start moving through life with intention, with purpose. There's a reason why so many great thinkers, leaders, and creators spend time in solitude. They understand that you can't create something meaningful in the midst of chaos. You need space, you need quiet. That's when the ideas come. That's when the vision becomes clear. Think about it. When was the last time you had a breakthrough? While scrolling through your phone or running from meeting to meeting? Exactly. So let me challenge you. Take a moment. Step away from the noise, the distractions, the chaos. Sit with yourself. Yes, it'll be uncomfortable at first. You might feel restless, anxious, maybe even bored. But push through that. Because on the other side of that discomfort is something beautiful. On the other side is clarity, strength, and purpose. And when you find that clarity, don't keep it to yourself. Use it. Share it. Let it guide your actions, your words, your life. Because the world doesn't need more noise. It needs people who are clear about who they are and what they're here to do. So go ahead, be still, be quiet, and listen. Because in that stillness and that quiet, you'll find everything you've been looking for. And you'll realize it was within you all along. Let's go deeper. Because this idea of stepping into stillness, this practice of being alone with yourself, it's not just about finding clarity, it's about rediscovering the essence of who you are. It's about peeling back the layers of expectation, the masks you wear for the world, and getting down to the raw, unfiltered truth of your existence. That's powerful. And yet, so few people take the time to tap into it. Why? Because we've been conditioned to fear it. Think about it. From the moment we're old enough to understand the world, we're told to stay busy. Idle hands are the devil's workshop, they say. Keep moving, keep achieving, keep proving. But let me tell you something, stillness is not idleness. It's not wasted time. In fact, it's the most valuable time you'll ever spend, because it's when you reconnect with the source of your power yourself. Now, let's talk about what happens when you sit in that stillness. Because it's not just about clarity. It's about confrontation. And that's where most people get uncomfortable. When you strip away the distractions, the constant scroll of social media, the endless grind of work, the noise of the world, you're left with just you. And sometimes that's a hard person to face. Why? Because in the quiet, there's no place to hide. Your fears come up, your regrets, your insecurities, all the things you buried under layers of busyness, they rise to the surface. And let me tell you, it's tempting to run, to pick up your phone, turn on the TV, do anything to avoid sitting with those feelings. But here's the thing, running doesn't solve anything. It only delays the inevitable, because no matter where you go, there you are. So what do? You stay, you sit with it, you lean into the discomfort. Because on the other side of that discomfort is growth, transformation, freedom. You see, the things you're running from aren't as scary as you think. They only have power over you because you've never taken the time to face them. But when you do, when you look those fears, those doubts, those insecurities in the eye, they lose their grip on you. You realize they're just shadows, and shadows can't hurt you. Now, here's the part where the magic happens. When you stay in that stillness long enough, you start to hear something. At first, it's faint like a whisper. But the longer you listen, the clearer it becomes. It's your inner voice, the one you've been drowning out with all the noise. And let me tell you something about that voice, it's wise. It's strong. It knows things you've forgotten. Things about who you are, what you're capable of, and why you're here. That voice will remind you of your dreams, the ones you put on the shelf because life got in the way. It will remind you of your values, the ones you compromised because you were too busy pleasing others. And most importantly, it will remind you of your strength, the strength you've had all along but forgot in the midst of the chaos. This is where the shift happens. When you start listening to that voice, you stop looking outside of yourself for answers. You stop needing validation from others. You stop chasing things that don't align with your purpose because you found something deeper, something unshakable. You found yourself. And let me tell you, when you find yourself, you become unstoppable because you're no longer living on autopilot. You're no longer swayed by the opinions of others or the pressures of society. You're living intentionally. Every decision you make, every action you take comes from a place of alignment and authenticity. That's power. That's freedom. But let's be real, it's not a one-time thing. Finding clarity in stillness isn't something you do once and check off your list. It's a practice, a discipline. You have to make it a habit to step away, to disconnect, to be alone with yourself. And in a world that's constantly demanding your attention, that's not easy, but it's necessary. Think about the greatest minds, the greatest leaders, the greatest creators in history. They all understood the power of solitude. Albert Einstein, Maya Angelou, Martin Luther King Jr., they didn't create their brilliance in the midst of chaos. They carved out time to think, to reflect, to dream. And you can do the same. Because the truth is, the answers you're looking for, the breakthrough you're waiting for, it's not out there. It's in you. But you'll never find it if you don't take the time to look. So, let me ask you, when was the last time you sat with yourself? When was the last time you turned off the noise and just listened? If it's been a while, don't wait any longer. Make it a priority. Because your life, your dreams, your purpose, it all starts with you. And let me tell you something else. When you start living from that place of clarity and alignment, people will notice. They'll see a change in you. They'll feel your energy. Because there's something magnetic about someone who knows who they are and what they're here to do. That kind of clarity, it's rare and it's powerful. So don't be afraid to step away. Don't be afraid to be alone. Because in that stillness, you'll find the strength, the wisdom, and the purpose you've been searching for. And when you find that, you can take on the world. No scratch that you can change the world. You're your best company. Let's take a moment to really unpack this, because it's more than just a statement, it's a truth that can transform your life. Too often we live in a world that equates being alone with being lonely, but they're not the same. Being lonely is a longing for connection that feels out of reach, while being alone, choosing to be alone, is about cultivating a deep connection with the most important person in your life, yourself. When was the last time you truly enjoyed your own company? Not out of necessity, but out of choice. And think about that. When was the last time you looked forward to a quiet evening with just you? No distractions, no obligations, no expectations. If the answer doesn't come easily, it's time to change that. Because being your best company is one of the greatest gifts you can give yourself. Here's the thing, when you're with yourself, you're in the presence of someone who knows you better than anyone else ever could. You don't have to explain your thoughts or justify your feelings. You don't have to wear a mask or put on a performance. You can just be. That kind of authenticity, that freedom to exist as you are, is rare, and it starts with you embracing it. But let's be honest, getting to that place isn't always easy. We live in a world that glorifies busyness, a world that tells us we should be doing something, achieving something, or connecting with someone every moment of the day. So when we're alone, we often feel restless, like we're wasting time. But let me tell you this, time spent with yourself is never wasted. It's an investment in your mental clarity, your emotional well-being, and your personal growth. Being your best company means becoming your own biggest supporter. It means silencing that inner critic that tells you you're not enough, that you need someone else's approval to feel worthy. It means showing up for yourself in the same way you'd show up for someone you love, offering yourself kindness, patience, and understanding. I think about how you talk to your best friend when they're struggling. Do you criticize them? Do you tear them down? Of course not. So why do that to yourself? When you embrace your own company, you start to see yourself in a new light. You realize that you're not defined by your mistakes or your failures, but by how you rise after them. You start to recognize your own strength, your own resilience, your own beauty, not in a superficial way, but in a way that goes deep, that feels unshakable. And here's something else. When you're comfortable with yourself, you stop looking for someone else to complete you. You stop depending on others to fill your emotional gaps or make you feel whole. You realize that you were never incomplete to begin with. That's not to say you don't value relationships or connections, but they become something you choose, not something you need. You're no longer looking for someone to save you because you've learned how to save yourself. Being your best company also means giving yourself permission to explore, to dream, to discover who you are outside of what others expect from you. When you're alone, there's no one to judge you, no one to set limits on what you can imagine or pursue. You're free to ask yourself the big questions. What do I want? What makes me happy? What do I value? And in that freedom, you start to find answers that feel true, answers that align with the deepest parts of who you are. Now, let's talk about the joy of it, the joy of sitting in a quiet room with a book that speaks to your soul, the joy of walking through nature and feeling the earth beneath your feet, the sun on your face, the breeze in your hair. The joy of cooking a meal just for yourself and savoring every bite, not because you're sharing it with someone else, but because you deserve that care, that pleasure. You see, being your best company isn't just about self-improvement, it's about self-celebration. It's about finding delight in your own thoughts, your own ideas, your own presence. It's about realizing that your time with yourself is just as valuable, if not more so, than your time with anyone else. Of course, there will be challenges. There will be moments when the quiet feels too loud, when your thoughts become overwhelming, when being alone feels like a mirror reflecting back parts of yourself you'd rather not see. But those moments are opportunities. They're chances to confront your fears, to heal old wounds, to grow into the person you're meant to be. Because here's the truth, the relationship you have with yourself is the foundation for every other relationship in your life. If you can't sit with yourself, how can you truly sit with someone else? If you can't love yourself, how can you fully accept love from another? If you can't be your own best company, How can you bring your best self to the world? So, make the time, create the space, turn off the noise and tune into yourself. Start small, a few minutes a day of quiet reflection, a walk by yourself without your phone, a journal where you can pour out your thoughts without judgment. And as you do, you'll start to notice something. The more you enjoy your own company, the more magnetic you become. People are drawn to those who are comfortable in their own skin, who don't need external validation to feel whole. That's the paradox of it all. When you stop chasing others, they start chasing you. When you stop looking outward for fulfillment, you find it within. And when you become your own best company, you don't just transform your life, you inspire others to do the same. So take that first step. Be brave enough to be alone, not as a last resort, but as a first choice. Because when you do, you'll discover something incredible. You've been your best company all along, you just needed to give yourself the chance to see it. And once you do, there's no going back. Because the power of being your own best company is the power to live a life that's truly your own. Let's break this down, because I want you to feel this truth in your bones. You, just as you are enough. But here's the thing, many of us don't believe it. We spend so much of our lives seeking validation from others, trying to fit into spaces that weren't built for us, trying to mold ourselves into what we think the world wants us to be. And in the process, we forget how to enjoy our own company. But let me tell you something, you can't truly love yourself if you don't even like being with yourself. Let's take a moment to sit with that. How much of your time do you spend alone, really alone? Not scrolling through your phone, not binging the latest show, not numbing yourself with endless distractions. I mean, just you by yourself in your own space, your own thoughts, your own energy. If that idea feels uncomfortable, it's okay. You're not alone in feeling that way. We've been conditioned to believe that solitude is a punishment, that if we're alone, something must be wrong. But let me flip that for you. Solitude isn't a punishment, it's a privilege. When you learn to enjoy your own company, you unlock a power that so many people never experience. Because here's the truth. The relationship you have with yourself sets the tone for every other relationship in your life. If you can't be comfortable with you, how can you expect anyone else to be? If you don't love yourself, how can you fully receive love from someone else? It starts with you. Being your best company doesn't mean you're shutting out the world or rejecting the people around you. No, it means you're creating a foundation, a strong, unshakable foundation built on self-respect, self-awareness, and self-love. It means you're giving yourself the gift of knowing who you are when no one else is around, when there's no one else to impress, no one else to please. And let me tell you, when you know who you are in those quiet moments, nothing and no one can take that away from you. Now let's get practical. How do you become your best company? It starts with treating yourself the way you treat someone you love. And think about it, when you care about someone, you listen to them, you encourage them, you forgive them, they make mistakes. So why is it so hard to do that for yourself? Start listening to your own needs. Start encouraging yourself instead of criticizing. Start forgiving yourself for the times you fell short, for the mistakes you've made. Because let me tell you, beating yourself up doesn't make you stronger. It just makes you tired, and you deserve better than that. Spending time alone is an opportunity to recharge, to reflect, to grow. It's not selfish, it's necessary. And think of it like this. If your phone battery is dead, you can't use it to call, to text, to connect. You've got to plug it in, recharge it. The same is true for you. If you're constantly giving your energy to everyone else, running on empty, you can't show up fully for the people you care about or the goals you're working toward. Taking time to be with yourself isn't about isolation, it's about restoration. And here's something beautiful that happens when you spend time alone. You start to discover things about yourself that you didn't even know. You might realize you've got talents or passions that have been buried under the demands of daily life. You might find joy in simple things, a walk in nature, a good book, a quiet moment with your thoughts. You start to see yourself not through the lens of what others think or expect, but through your own eyes. And that's when you realize just how extraordinary you are. You matter because you're here. You matter because you breathe, because you think, because you dream. And the world needs you to show up not as someone trying to fit in, but as someone daring to stand out. And that's what being alone teaches you. It teaches you to stand tall, to stand strong, to stand firm in who you are and what you believe. Because when you've been alone, truly alone, you face the hardest battle there is, the battle with yourself. And when you come out on the other side of that, when you've wrestled with your fears and your doubts and your insecurities and won, you become unshakable. You realize that no amount of noise can drown out your truth. No amount of criticism can diminish your light. No amount of rejection can make you forget your worth. So let me leave you with this. Solitude isn't a retreat, it's a reset. It's a chance to step away, to recharge, to realign. And when you come back from it, you're not the same. You're sharper, you're clearer, you're stronger. And that strength is contagious. It inspires others. It gives them permission to do the same. Because here's the thing about the power of being alone. It's not just for you. It's for everyone you touch, everyone you lead, everyone you inspire. When you show up in the world as your most authentic self, you give others the courage to do the same. And that's how we change the world, not by shouting over each other in the noise, but by finding our own clarity in the quiet and sharing it. So, as you leave here today, I want you to do something. I want you to make a promise to yourself. A promise to stop running, stop hiding, stop avoiding. A promise to sit with yourself, to listen, to reflect, to grow. A promise to become your own best company, your own strongest ally, your own greatest champion. Because when you do that, when you honor yourself in that way, you unlock a power that no one can take away. The power to stand alone. Yes, but more importantly, the power to walk forward, knowing that no matter what happens, you've got yourself, and that's enough. So go out there, be bold, be fearless, be you, and remember, the power of being alone isn't about the absence of others, it's about the presence of you. Thank you.